I have found the most amazing turn-based strategy game, and it's been all I've been playing. And actually, in my search for this game, I found a few other nice ones too. Queen and Joker, you could say. Really, I found the whole court. Let me show you 5 amazing tactics games you might not have played yet. You know those games that instantly grab you and won't let you go anymore? That's not exactly this next game. At least it wasn't for me. It's probably the old, and I mean old school, 8-bit art style that got to me the most. I just like my nice graphics, alright? But I hung in there and little by little. So, what got me first and surprised me the most, as I hadn't seen it coming, is its storytelling. We start off in a storm on the way to a tiny island called Hydra to find a missing girl. After some initial tutorial areas, I make it out of the bowels of the ship, where I find my hired mercenary crew in a tense standoff with the boat crew who don't want to sail any further because they believe the island is cursed. Lucky for me, I have set up my character with some robust persuasion skills, and I managed to convince the crew to take us on land. Big mistake. And soon thereafter I find I wasn't that lucky after all, as a massive tentacle takes down the ship and I wash onto the shore of Island Hydra. At this point, Skald against the Black Priory had pretty much won me over. I never thought an 8-bit game could have such a great atmosphere, and I hadn't even done any battling yet. I think Skald is best described as an ancestor of Baldur's Gate, but like really far in the past. This game's progression is very similar, and you can freely explore the island and build your character. Find weapons and items and heroes to add to your party. There's of course crafting and cooking, as every game as this is supposed to have that now, and all of this is fine. But aside from the storytelling, it's the world building that really makes this game stand out for me and makes me want to come back to it time and time again. There's a lot of lore, and every Lovecraftian monster is interesting, which also means there's a lot of reading. Like a lot of it, so that's something to keep in mind. Which brings us to the battle system, which is, like I said earlier, inspired by Baldur's Gate and Dungeons & Dragons rules. So you know what to expect here. Characters and enemies take turns depending on initiative. Each has 3 action points and 1 move point, with which they can either cast spells or take direct action, depending on your class. Honestly, the combat is pretty straightforward, but still very enjoyable. And something I forgot to mention, the music is surprisingly good too. Let me just preface this next one with, don't judge a book by its cover, because you'll be missing out on something great. Let me just flash it up here for you real quick to ease you into it. Alright, I know we're all tired of the RPG Maker games, and that's basically what I thought when I started this game. But surprisingly, the game held my attention, and 15 minutes turned into an hour and then 2. So let me try to explain. I love a good name-making kind of story. It doesn't matter what kind of game or genre. I loved it in Battle Brothers, Forza Horizon 5 and Kingdom Come Deliverance. And that's the first thing our adventurer guild dropped on. The old guildmaster has died and left the guild to you. Sadly, your new guild is not all it's cracked up to be. It turns out he's let things slide a bit, so it's time to put on the old guildmaster hat and start adventuring. We take on some humble quests like clearing rats from basements, yes, we've all been there, but slowly we build up our way to more and more epic quests, and a guild worthy of our name. Along the way, bigger and better adventurers join our party and guild, and with a guild comes, of course, guild management. Every hero in your employ gets paid every 5 days. If you're short, you're in trouble. It brings down the mood of the adventurers and displays a major role in combat. But more on that later. Characters have relationships with each other, and certain people don't get along, so you don't want to put them in the same party, because this will lead to debuffs and all kinds of other drama. Something else I thought was really cool is that each adventurer has his or her own backstory, complete with unique traits and abilities. There are 11 different classes, which might not sound like much, but they do all have a good amount of abilities to choose from. Now, for the combat, this is a marriage of Darkest Dungeon, Battle Brothers and Baldur's Gate 3. And this is where the game really got its claws into me. At first glance, it doesn't seem like anything you haven't seen 1,000 times before. Another initiative-based turn-based strategy game. But once we take it for a spin, there appears to be a lot more horsepower under the hood than we first expected. Meaning this game plays with a very robust mechanics system. First off, those relationships I was talking about earlier are going to be helping with buffs, debuffs, and even some additional attacks. When you, for example, push your enemy into a friend, it counts as an extra attack. Do this with someone you're less amicable with, and your teammate instead loses health. Another interesting mechanic is the bravery system. And yes, I would say this is a close cousin to the bravely default system. Here too you can use bravery points, which you can build up with various actions during combat, take special actions with, like boosting your accuracy. The caveat being that if you run low on bravery points, you start getting debuffs, more and more of them. On the other side, save them up and you get buffs. There's a lot more to consider here, like the food system, similar to the one in Darkest Dungeon. If you go hungry, you start losing action points, and almost as bad, enemies start moving faster. This game is so jam-packed full of interesting mechanics, both inside and outside of combat, and it's definitely worth taking a look at. But before we get to the new king of turn-based tactics games, I have two bonus shoutouts I wanted to talk about because they're so incredibly original. Again, as with many indie games, this game looks deceptively simple, and you might think there's really not a lot going on here. But you would be wrong, because this is one deep game. So, we have a ninja who can move left, right, and turn around. Doing so uses a turn. After each turn, the enemy takes a move. Nothing surprising there. Where things become interesting is with the actions. You start with 2, which you can add to your actions bar, queued up to use as an attack. These queued up actions, however, only take 1 turn, and I think you can see where this is going. Say you have your cute little ninja stuck here between these 2 bad guys here who are ready to strike. Lucky for your ninja, you've queued up a double strike to take them both out. But that's not all. At the tail end, you also have a little surprise for the guy unsuspectedly standing behind them, an arrow to the face. And that's what we in the business call a combo.
Nice.
Attacks have cooldowns, so you can't just spawn attack after attack, but you'll have to carefully plan each move. Plus, there's one additional wrinkle that we haven't talked about yet, the illustrious swap, where you swap places with an enemy you're facing. But the cool thing is, the attack he was about to perform continues, meaning he's about to chop down his ally. I'm so evil. As you can imagine, this becomes a complicated puzzle to dodge, strike, and swap through. But when you get it right, it looks super badass. But this is not everything. Shogun Showdown is part roguelike, meaning there's permanent progression to unlock in the form of new moves, upgrades, and new characters with different abilities. This is such an original game, and if this sounds at all interesting, go and show the developers some love. Similar to the last game, this second shoutout blends multiple genres together so well. And man, do I dread to think about the alternate universe where I didn't pick up this game. That poor sap. He'll never live up to his true potential. So what are they raving about here? Well, again, it's a combination of genres. Ninjas are probably the coolest, but as a kid, you know what I also loved? Westerns. And Arco is the best in the business. Let me show you what makes Arco so interesting. I'm on an open field, surrounded by a group of men with guns. All I have is my bow and arrow. The situation looks bleak, hopeless almost. I dash forwards, dodging bullets left and right. The men are out of ammo and need to reload. But I'm now perfectly positioned to draw my bow and arrow and take one of the assailants down. As I shoot, another guy starts to draw his weapon. I move around him, simultaneously recharging my action points and positioning myself for my next takedown. Now this might sound like chaos, but this all plays out in a planning and action phase kind of ballet. This combination of real-time action and turn-based strategy feels so satisfying. It's almost scary. It sounds super easy, but when you're being shot at from all sides, it's not always straightforward to get out of the way and take down your opponents. Plus, you can't take too long to decide because literal ghosts will start appearing and they will harm you. These are manifestations of all the questionable actions you've been taking during the game. For example, on my travels I found this cute little goat all alone tied up. Didn't see much sense in leaving her there and instead butchered her for meat. Immediately, my character felt gloomier. But worse, as it turns out, a little while later I met a family who were looking for that cute little goat. The combat mechanics are amazing and impossible to put down. But if that was it, it'd be merely good. But there is more. The story and atmosphere of the game are just as good, if not better than the amazing combat mechanics. Start off with Tizzo, a grisly old gnarly guy who fits perfectly in this western type setting. Tizzo's revenge story of the massacre of a local tribe by newcomers is dark and emotional. But there are multiple characters with separate storylines that intertwine. Usually I'm not a big fan of this, except they're all very good. And it doesn't feel like an interruption of the game when you switch. The vibe and atmosphere of this game are really good, and the pixel art is on point. This is a really good game. And then it's time for the number 1. The new king of turn-based tactics games. Now combine turn-based tactics with a bit of grand strategy and a good chunk of role-playing and you have Songs of Conquest. When I booted up this game, it instantly clicked. Beautiful overworld reminds me a lot of Thronebreaker, another favorite. You move through the pixel map interacting with chests, buildings, characters, events and many other points of interest. From these interactions you get gold, troops, gear and occasionally artifacts to boost your hero. Besides this, you also claim buildings which help you with passive income such as gold and stone, recruit more troops and upgrade buildings. Traversing the overworld is a large and very enjoyable part of the game. Getting some extra troops or gold by discovering a hidden shed far out in the woods is very satisfying. There's always something to see and do and many side quests to embark on, plus the overworld looks amazing. But arguably, this is all just set up for the turn-based battles, which do steal the show. The turn-based battles play out like any of your classics. Initiative driven, you and your opponent take turns shooting and hacking at each other. There's cover mechanics, height differences and many troops to familiarize yourself with. Making things more interesting is the hero, or wielder, as they're called in Songs of Conquest. This wielder can draw upon the essence of our troops to weave spells and cast magic, meaning the more you get hit over the head, the more magic you'll be able to play with. And you're going to get hit over the head a lot. At this point, you might have drawn some parallels with another little game I enjoy, Heroes of Might and Magic, and you wouldn't be wrong. This is basically a pixelized version of said game, but everything it does and copies, it does so well. I haven't been able to put this down since I got this during the Steam Winter Sale in December. There is a very robust single-player campaign with 4 different factions to play, skirmish mode with maps to be tweaked to your own liking, multiplayer, which admittedly I haven't tried yet, and also mod support for the community. So there's basically an infinite amount of maps and scenarios to play. Don't sleep on this one. And that's it, 5 more amazing turn-based strategy games worth trying. Check here for 11 of the best XCOM-like tactics games, and this one for 20 amazing new indie games you probably haven't tried yet. I hope to see you in the next one.